Throughout history, the figure of the witch has occupied a place of both fear and fascination. In various cultures, witches have been seen as powerful individuals capable of wielding supernatural forces, often outside the bounds of societal norms. The earliest records of witchcraft date back to ancient civilizations where magic and religion were often intertwined. These early perceptions were generally ambivalent, with witches respected for their knowledge of herbs and healing, yet feared for their potential to cause harm. The transition from ambivalence to outright fear became particularly pronounced during the medieval period in Europe. Here, the image of the witch was increasingly demonized, influenced by religious dogma and societal anxieties. This shift laid the groundwork for the infamous witch hunts that would sweep across Europe and later America. These hunts were not merely episodes of mass hysteria, but complex events driven by a mix of religious fervor, political maneuvering, and social tensions. They left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness, embedding the fear of witches deeply into Western culture. As the fervor of the witch hunts began to wane in the 18th century, a shift in the perception of witchcraft started to take shape. Enlightenment thinking, with its emphasis on reason and scientific inquiry, began to challenge the superstitions that had fueled the witch hunts. Witchcraft was increasingly seen as a relic of a less enlightened past, and those accused were often reinterpreted as victims of ignorance and injustice. This period marked the beginning of a gradual transformation in how society viewed witches and witchcraft. In the 20th century, a significant resurgence of interest in witchcraft emerged, but with a markedly different tone. This new wave was characterized by the rise of Modern Wicca, a neo-pagan religious movement that embraced elements of ancient witchcraft while rejecting the negative connotations associated with it. Founded by Gerald Gardner in the 1950s, Wicca sought to reclaim the positive aspects of witchcraft, emphasizing harmony with nature, personal empowerment, and spiritual growth. This movement gained momentum, attracting followers who were drawn to its eclectic and inclusive practices. The evolution of witchcraft into Wicca represents a profound shift in societal attitudes. No longer seen as malevolent outcasts, modern witches are often viewed as spiritual guides and keepers of ancient wisdom. Wicca promotes a philosophy of balance and respect for all living things, which resonates with contemporary values of environmentalism and individual rights. This shift reflects broader changes in society's approach to spirituality, with a growing interest in alternative and holistic practices. Today, Wicca and other neo-pagan traditions continue to grow, offering a diverse and inclusive community for those seeking a spiritual path outside mainstream religions. The journey from the fear and persecution of the past to the acceptance and celebration of the present is a testament to the resilience of human belief and the ongoing quest for understanding and harmony. The modern perception of witches as practitioners of a legitimate and respected spiritual tradition underscores the transformative power of cultural evolution and the enduring appeal of the mystical and the magical. The Puritan settlers of New England who founded Salem were deeply religious. Adhering to a strict interpretation of Christianity, they believed in the constant presence of the devil and his agents, which created a climate ripe for suspicion and fear. This context is essential to understanding why the Salem Witch Trials erupted with such ferocity in 1692. The Puritans saw the world in stark contrasts of good and evil, with little room for ambiguity. Any deviation from their norms was not merely a social misstep, but a potential sign of diabolical influence. In this tightly knit community, conformity was paramount, and those who stood out were often regarded with suspicion. This background of religious zealotry and social rigidity laid the groundwork for the events that would unfold. The Puritans' fear of the unknown and the unseen was exacerbated by their isolated existence in the New World, surrounded by what they perceived as untamed wilderness and indigenous cultures that did not align with their beliefs. This isolation amplified their fears and made them more susceptible to mass hysteria. The Puritans' belief in predestination also played a role. They were constantly seeking signs of God's favor or disfavor, interpreting natural and social occurrences as manifestations of divine will. This mindset made them particularly vigilant for any signs of witchcraft, which they believed was a direct affront to God. The fear of witchcraft was thus not an abstract threat, but a tangible danger to the community's spiritual and social order. This environment of heightened religious fervor and social control created a perfect storm for the witch trials. Additionally, the socio-political context of Salem must not be overlooked. The community was experiencing significant stress due to a variety of factors, including economic hardship, disputes over land, and conflicts with Native American tribes. These pressures contributed to a general atmosphere of anxiety and mistrust, which made the community more prone to scapegoating. In this fraught setting, the accusations of witchcraft that began in 1692 quickly spiraled out of control, fueled by fear, superstition, and personal vendettas. The Salem Witch Trials began with the strange behavior of young girls in 1691 to 1692. Betty Paris and Abigail Williams exhibited bizarre symptoms like fits and outbursts. A local physician declared them bewitched, sparking a chain reaction. Accusations targeted Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. Tituba's confession escalated the situation, claiming other witches in Salem. Accusations spread swiftly, gripping the community with fear and paranoia. The trials spiraled into a community-wide epidemic of fear and retribution. Section 3. The mechanics of the trials. The Salem Witch Trials defied principles of justice and due process. Accused witches faced intense scrutiny with little defense. Trials relied on spectral evidence, inherently unreliable and subjective. Acceptance of such evidence led to wrongful convictions. A special court, the Court of Oyer and Terminer, handled these cases. Judges caught in hysteria saw defense as guilt. The trials lacked proper legal representation and were marked by fear. Confessions under duress played a pivotal role. The trials led to executions and imprisonments, leaving a lasting scar. They serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of abandoning reason and fairness. Section 4. The aftermath and lessons learned. The Salem Witch Trials ended in 1693 due to growing skepticism and opposition. Governor William Phipps dissolved the Court of Oyer and Terminer, disallowing spectral evidence. This marked the trial's decline as people questioned the legitimacy of the accusations. Realizing innocent people were executed led to remorse and re-evaluation. Efforts were made to atone for the injustices committed. The Massachusetts General Court declared the trials unlawful and granted indemnities. Public apologies were issued and the community sought to make amends. The trials serve as a powerful example of mass hysteria and social breakdown. Lessons from Salem continue to shape legal and cultural responses to crises. The trials underscored the importance of due process and reliable evidence. These principles influenced the development of more rigorous legal standards. The legacy contributed to a legal system prioritizing individual rights. The cultural memory of the trials is preserved through literature and education. Arthur Miller's The Crucible uses the trials as an allegory for social persecution. The trials symbolize the dangers of extremism, intolerance, and abuse of power. This legacy informs contemporary discussions about justice and human rights. Personal stories from Salem. The Salem witch trials were deeply personal tragedies. Each accused witch had a story marked by fear and bravery. Rebecca Nurse, a respected elderly woman, was found guilty and hanged. Giles Corey was pressed to death, protesting the corrupt process. Young accusers later expressed regret, haunted by their actions. These stories remind us of the trial's human dimension and enduring impact. The European witch hunts, spanning from the late 15th to the early 18th century, were rooted in a complex web of social, religious, and political factors. Unlike the isolated Salem witch trials, the European hunts were widespread, leading to the execution of tens of thousands. The origins of these hunts can be traced back to a growing fear of the supernatural combined with social upheavals. Europe was experiencing significant turmoil, including wars, plagues, and economic distress, creating fertile ground for scapegoating. The publication of texts like the Malleus Maleficarum in 1487 catalyzed widespread panic. This book provided a detailed guide on identifying, prosecuting, and executing witches, portraying them as agents of the devil. The fear of witches as a malignant force working with the devil became deeply ingrained, leading communities to take drastic measures. Religious conflicts of the Reformation and Counter-Reformation intensified the climate of suspicion and intolerance. Local authorities, driven by fear and a desire to assert control, initiated witch trials that spread rapidly. The hunts were characterized by legal proceedings, public hysteria, and brutal executions. Religion played a central role in the European witch hunts, with the Catholic Church and later Protestant denominations actively participating. The Church's involvement was rooted in its doctrinal stance against heresy and efforts to maintain religious orthodoxy. The Inquisition, initially established to combat heresy, extended its reach to include witchcraft. Inquisitors used torture and coercion to extract confessions, aligning witchcraft with heresy. Protestant reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin reinforced the belief that witches were agents of Satan. The Reformation's emphasis on personal piety and scriptural purity heightened the fear of deviations from accepted norms. In Protestant regions, local pastors and community leaders often led witch hunts. Sermons, pamphlets, and theological writings spread witchcraft hysteria. The Church's role was both direct through the Inquisition and indirect through its influence on public opinion. The intertwining of religious doctrine and secular law led to widespread and often brutal persecution. The legal framework of the European witch hunts often resulted in gross miscarriages of justice. Accused witches were subjected to intense scrutiny and harsh interrogation methods, including torture. Torture led to numerous false confessions, as individuals admitted to witchcraft to escape further pain. Accusations could stem from personal grudges, local conflicts, or genuine fear of witchcraft. The trials were biased against the defendant, with little opportunity for a fair defense. Spectral evidence, including testimonies about visions or dreams, was accepted in many cases. Trials were conducted by special tribunals focused on extracting confessions and securing convictions. The accused were frequently denied legal representation and proceedings were secretive. Once convicted, the punishment was typically execution, often by burning at the stake. Social mechanisms, including pervasive fear and targeting of marginalized individuals, played a crucial role in the hunts. Several notable witch trials across Europe highlight the varying nature and intensity of the hunts. The Trier witch trials in Germany, 1581 to 1593, resulted in over 300 executions driven by religious fervor and local conflicts. The North Berwick witch trials in Scotland, 1590 to 1592, involved King James VI, leading to torture and execution of many accused witches. The Würzburg and Bamberg witch trials in Germany, 1620s to 1630s, were among the deadliest, involving hundreds of executions. These trials targeted individuals from various social classes, reflecting deep-seated fear of witchcraft. The Loudun witch trials in France, 1634, centered around accusations against nuns and a local priest, influenced by political rivalries. Urbain Grandier was convicted and burned at the stake, despite questionable evidence. These trials exemplify how accusations of witchcraft could be manipulated for personal and political gain. The intensity and scale of these trials reflect the willingness of local authorities to use extreme measures. The notable trials demonstrate the widespread and devastating impact of the European witch hunts. The decline of the witch hunts in Europe began in the late 17th century, influenced by changing intellectual, legal, and social factors. The Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason and scientific inquiry, played a crucial role in undermining the beliefs that fueled the hunts. Intellectuals and philosophers began to challenge the existence of witchcraft and criticize the trial methods. Legal reforms emphasized due process and the rights of the accused, reducing the number of prosecutions. Spectral evidence and confessions obtained under torture were increasingly seen as unreliable. High-profile cases where innocent individuals were exonerated contributed to public skepticism. The Catholic Church began to distance itself from witch hunts, and Protestant leaders also became less inclined to support them. Social changes, including political stability and economic development, reduced the conditions that fueled the hunts. Communities became less inclined to resort to scapegoating, and the sensationalism of witch trials lost its appeal. By the early 18th century, the era of widespread witch persecutions in Europe had largely ended. The Enlightenment marked a pivotal transition in the perception of witchcraft. This intellectual movement emphasized reason, scientific inquiry, and skepticism, challenging the superstitions that fueled witch hunts. Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire, John Locke, and Immanuel Kant critiqued the irrational fears surrounding witchcraft. Voltaire ridiculed the absurdity of witch trials and the use of torture to extract confessions. John Locke's philosophy of empiricism emphasized evidence-based reasoning, undermining spectral evidence. The Enlightenment's focus on human rights and individual liberties contributed to the decline of witch hunts. Cesare Beccaria argued against the use of torture and advocated for fair trials and proportionate punishments. The dissemination of Enlightenment ideas through books and public debates gradually changed public opinion. As literacy rates increased, more people questioned the validity of witchcraft accusations. The Enlightenment's legacy in promoting rational thought continues to shape contemporary views on justice and human rights. Literature and the arts played a significant role in shifting societal perceptions of witchcraft. Works of literature, theatre, and later film and television reimagined witches as complex characters. This cultural transformation began during the Enlightenment and continued through the Romantic period and beyond. William Shakespeare's Macbeth explored themes of ambition, power, and fate, suggesting human actions play a significant role in destiny. The Romantic period furthered this trend, with writers like Goethe and Mary Shelley incorporating elements of the supernatural. Goethe's Faust and Shelley's Frankenstein delved into themes of knowledge, power, and moral ambiguity. The rise of Gothic literature provided a medium for reimagining witches. Bram Stoker's Dracula and Edgar Allan Poe's works invited readers to question their preconceptions about fear and the unknown. Sympathetic portrayals of witches, like in L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz, emerged. The evolution of witchcraft in literature and the arts reflects broader cultural shifts towards a more nuanced understanding of those once marginalized. Legal reforms were crucial in ending witch hunts in Europe and America. Enlightenment ideas prioritized due process and concrete evidence. Skepticism towards spectral evidence and torture grew. Frederick the Great banned torture in Prussia in 1740. Rigorous evidence standards made convictions harder. The Witchcraft Act of 1735 decriminalized witchcraft in England. These reforms ended witch hunts and laid the groundwork for modern legal principles. The rise of folklore studies and ethnography. The 19th century saw the rise of folklore studies and ethnography, crucial for understanding witchcraft traditions. Scholars like the brothers Grimm, Sir James Frazer, and Margaret Murray documented and analyzed witchcraft's cultural contexts. This marked a shift from viewing witchcraft as criminal to recognizing it as cultural heritage. The brothers Grimm systematically gathered folklore, including witchcraft stories. Frazer's The Golden Bough explored magic, religion, and folklore connections. Margaret Murray's controversial theory on witch trials sparked interest in witchcraft's historical dimensions. Folklore studies and ethnography reframed witchcraft as a legitimate academic subject. The 20th century witnessed a rebirth of interest in witchcraft, culminating in the emergence of Modern Wicca and other neo-pagan movements. This resurgence was driven by a combination of societal shifts, including the countercultural movements of the 1960s and 1970s, a growing interest in alternative spirituality, and the feminist movement. These influences converged to create a fertile ground for the revival and transformation of witchcraft into a respected and widely practiced spiritual path. The countercultural movements of the 1960s and 1970s, with their emphasis on personal freedom, anti-establishment values and exploration of alternative lifestyles played a significant role in the revival of witchcraft. Many individuals disillusioned with the roots of modern Wicca trace back to Gerald Gardner, a British civil servant and occultist. Born in 1884, Gardner travelled in Asia, developing an interest in mystical traditions. Returning to England, he joined the Folklore Society and the Rosicrucian Order. In 1954, he published Witchcraft Today, marking the formal birth of Wicca. Gardner emphasized nature worship and the veneration of a goddess and a god. His charismatic personality helped spread Wicca, establishing covens and initiating many. Wicca is characterized by core principles and practices that distinguish it from other traditions. At the heart of Wiccan belief is the reverence for nature and the divine in all living things. This is reflected in honoring the cycles of nature through seasonal festivals known as sabbats. Wicca also believes in a duality of deities, the goddess and the god. Magic or magic is another key practice, seen as a natural force harnessed through rituals and tools. The Wiccan Rede emphasizes personal responsibility and causing no harm to others. The influence of feminism and environmentalism. Feminism and environmentalism have profoundly influenced modern Wicca. The feminist movement resonated with Wicca's divine feminine and women's empowerment. Environmentalism emphasizes living in harmony with the earth, aligning with Wicca's reverence for nature. Wicca's rituals often take place outdoors, incorporating natural elements. This synergy highlights Wicca's commitment to nature and environmental protection. Section 4. Wicca in Pop Culture and Media. The portrayal of Wicca and witchcraft in popular culture has shaped public perceptions and increased interest in these practices. From literature to film and TV, depictions of witches have influenced how society views modern witchcraft. This visibility has contributed to the growing acceptance of Wicca as a legitimate spiritual path. Bewitched, airing from 1964 to 1972, was an influential portrayal of witchcraft in modern media. The show featured Samantha, a suburban witch using her magical powers in everyday life. It introduced the concept of a benevolent witch, challenging negative stereotypes. The Craft and Charmed in the 1990s further popularized witchcraft among younger audiences. These portrayals sparked a renewed interest in exploring witchcraft and Wicca. Today, social media provides new avenues for sharing and exploring Wiccan practices. Online communities and digital content creators are expanding the reach of Wiccan teachings. This increased visibility fosters a more inclusive understanding of modern witchcraft. As Wicca and modern witchcraft evolve, they play a significant role in the global spiritual landscape. Inclusivity and diversity are key trends, reflecting broader societal movements. The digital age has transformed Wicca, making it more accessible through online communities and virtual rituals. Environmental concerns will continue to shape Wicca, emphasizing harmony with nature. Wicca's openness to change ensures its relevance in a rapidly changing world. The future of Wicca is bright, with endless possibilities for growth and positive impact. The journey of witchcraft, from the dark days of persecution to its modern acceptance, is a testament to the dynamic nature of human belief and society's evolving understanding of the unknown. The history of witchcraft is a mirror reflecting the fears, prejudices, and transformations within societies through the ages. The Salem Witch Trials and the European witch hunts were periods marked by hysteria, fear of the supernatural, and the scapegoating of marginalized individuals. These events were fueled by a confluence of religious fervor, social tensions, and legal practices that permitted the persecution of those accused of witchcraft. The shift from widespread persecution to a more enlightened understanding began during the Enlightenment, when thinkers critically reassessed the irrational fears that had driven witch hunts. The emphasis on reason, evidence, and human rights sparked legal reforms that curtailed the use of torture and spectral evidence, effectively ending the witch hunts. This period laid the groundwork for a more rational and humane judicial system, underscoring the importance of due process and the protection of individual rights. As society moved into the 20th century, The resurgence of interest in witchcraft, particularly through the establishment of modern Wicca, marked a significant transformation. Wicca, with its roots in ancient pagan traditions and its emphasis on nature worship, personal empowerment and spiritual growth, offered a positive reimagining of witchcraft. Figures like Gerald Gardner were instrumental in redefining witchcraft as a legitimate spiritual path, distancing it from its historical association with malevolence and persecution. The acceptance of Wicca and other neo-pagan traditions in contemporary society signifies the broader cultural shift towards inclusivity and diversity in spiritual practices. The journey from persecution to acceptance reflects not only the resilience of those who practice witchcraft, but also the capacity of society to grow beyond its fears and embrace a more nuanced understanding of different belief systems. This historical perspective highlights the progress made and the importance of continuing to promote tolerance and understanding. Modern witchcraft, particularly Wicca, has had a profound cultural and social impact, reshaping how spirituality is understood and practiced in contemporary society. One of the most significant contributions of modern witchcraft is its emphasis on environmentalism and the sacredness of nature. This ecological consciousness resonates deeply in an era marked by environmental crises, offering a spiritual framework that encourages sustainable living and a harmonious relationship with the earth. Wicca's focus on the divine feminine and the empowerment of women has also had a substantial influence. It provides a spiritual space where women can explore and celebrate their connection to the divine, challenging patriarchal norms and promoting gender equality. This aspect of Wicca aligns closely with feminist principles, offering a spiritual path that honors and elevates female experiences and leadership. The inclusive nature of Wicca, which welcomes individuals of all genders and sexual orientations, reflects broader societal movements towards equality and representation. In popular culture, the depiction of witches and Wicca has evolved from negative stereotypes to more nuanced and positive representations. Films, television series, and literature have played a crucial role in this transformation, presenting witches as complex characters and exploring themes of empowerment, justice, and personal growth. These portrayals have helped to demystify witchcraft and present it as a legitimate and enriching spiritual practice, influencing public perceptions and sparking widespread interest. The rise of digital media has further expanded the reach and impact of modern witchcraft. Online platforms have created vibrant communities where practitioners can share knowledge, support each other, and participate in virtual rituals. This accessibility has democratized the practice of witchcraft, allowing individuals from diverse backgrounds to connect and explore their spirituality. The cultural and social impact of modern witchcraft is thus multifaceted, promoting environmental consciousness, gender equality, and a more inclusive and interconnected spiritual community. Looking ahead, the future of Wicca holds promising prospects and ongoing challenges. Key opportunities lie in integrating technology with traditional practices. Virtual rituals and online covens enhance accessibility and community. Environmental concerns will remain central to Wicca's future. Inclusivity and diversity will shape modern witchcraft. Adapting to change ensures Wicca remains relevant. The evolution of witchcraft reflects resilience and societal transformation.